opinions expressed by callers, guests, and hosts do not necessarily reflect those of the Black Talk Radio Network and Black Talk Media Project. Black Talk Radio is new black media for the new millennium.
This is the Code Breakers. This is Paradox. Today is April 11th, 2017. We will be discussing, the title of the program, I should say, is Blood versus Money. We will be discussing a few topics around business, economics. We probably touch on Syria and a few other topics. We're also going to play a few video clips. Is DC and T there? Hello, fellas. You there?
Here. Can you hear?
I can hear you.
Sorry about that. I remuted myself. Apologize. Yes, I'm here. Present, sir.
Am I coming in clear?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right.
You can reach us. You can reach us on Twitter at Codebreakers191. I think we normally are active there, probably more than anything. We are also on Facebook at Codebreakers and probably Code Space Breakers. You can probably find it. You'll see our logo. And Instagram at Code_Breakers1865. You can obviously always find us on blacktalkradionetwork.com. And we're live on the first and third Tuesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Before we get started, I did want, and I just let him do what he do. I don't know if he's busy at this point, but I wanted Mr. Reed, if he had a few minutes, to touch on. I think he did a program on Libya, and I think slavery, either today or I guess maybe the last 48 hours. Oh, and yes, if he didn't mind, if he could just speak on that, if he didn't mind for a couple of minutes. I know that's kind of off script, DC and T. If y'all don't mind.
No, sir. Go ahead. Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Yes, thank you for asking me to share that information. I think it's an underreported story right now, but a UN agency that works with migrants, especially the migrants that's leaving Africa for Europe because of the destabilization of Northern Africa, they are reporting that a lot of people that they are helping who have escaped from Libya, that they have open slave markets trading in black bodies, African bodies. They're not trading white people. They're not trading Arabs or putting them into slavery. They're putting black people, African descendant people, into slavery. And that report came out in the past 48 hours. I saw it on one of the UK-based outlets. It might have been The Guardian, I believe, where I first saw that. And I have not seen it reported in any American news media. But apparently they have open slave markets right now in Libya, according to a UN agency that works with migrants.
All right, definitely appreciate that. All right, fellas. Real quick, I just wanted to throw a shout out to my grandfather who passed away recently. He did cross over, and he is looking out for me. So just wanted to say that real quick as well. But title: Blood versus Money. There's the conversation. Does that spark any thoughts? And the only reason why we're going to probably a little bit more freestyle. And DC, let me know when you need those, when we're going to do the clips. But
right on.
I don't know. We're probably going to be a little bit more loosey goosey, I think.
Not loosey
T as
goosey.
well. So we'll see how I play because I know we have a few topics, and I will say I didn't really do a lot of explanation, I guess, but real quick on did y'all have any questions about the topics? If y'all needed me to explain any of that or to the audience, you think? I don't know if y'all looked at the topics or not, but
Well, when you say blood versus money, are you just kind of go into what you mean by that as far as like what is the preference for whether it's going to be blood or whether it's going to be money? It's almost like the ballad of the bullet, so we got to
right.
be real clear, like we're
Well,
not.
I'm gonna need T to help me because he does a very good job historically since I've known him. Obviously, just around um, putting things in perspective from a finance position. As far as if you're gonna do war, if you're gonna develop, set up anything, you're gonna need finances in whatever form that may come in. Obviously. So T is really it really you. I mean, we did the title. Obviously, you're right there. Like, yeah, that's the. I remember us having that long debate actually, and it did make me think like, well, you do need money, but then what's the philosophy of that when we use the word money, and also historically how it can mean something different depending on what time frame you're talking about and what time frame you're speaking of, and what location, what group of people are we discussing at any particular time, from them raiding coffers and then using that, to either hire military, et cetera, to take whatever they're going to take or whatever. But the blood part, when I was thinking about it, was just, is blood more powerful or more important or more like or more critical when you're trying to start out, when you're trying to do something, either building an empire, bringing an empire, taking an empire down, or whatever you're trying to start. Is it the sacrifice of the person, his life, his kids' lives, generational lives, not just finances, not just resources outside of oneself, but people physically giving themselves to something and saying, if I don't have anything, you will have my commitment. No matter what we got to do, we're going to fight to take this. We're going to fight to bring this down. We're going to fight to end this, with or without. If we only have crumbs, if we don't have, and again, it gets tricky. And I want you to kind of touch on it. I know it gets tricky when I say that, but at the same time, it's like, well, who's supporting you though? So could you, if you can kind of remember that, could you kind of give me the just the finance side or the money side of like, well, I'm gonna give everything I got, which to me does, I think, supersedes the monetary piece of it. When you got people who are willing, think about like this is a horrible example, but like 300, this is a bad example, but just that we're willing to give everything to overcome, regardless of what money we might have or if we're being backed by a particular king or whatever.
Yeah, no, that's great, and you definitely had a good conversation on that. But I love this title. The comparison you give about 300 is interesting because it's taking that time frame where you had the Persians versus the Spartans. Sparta was a war society that hadn't quite, congealed with ancient Greece. And so they would kind of had their own little thing, their own little sovereignty, and they were a very militaristic society. What you saw in the movie, when you saw what they term as a black guy, he was actually a Moor coming to collect tribute from the Spartan king at the time. And he had heads of other kings that didn't pay tribute to their kingdom. It was Xerxes. Xerxes was ruling that kingdom. And so he was there to collect the money. And then that's when you had that whole scene that everyone remembers so well, when Leonidas, the king of Sparta at the time, He says, you come here and threaten me with with heads of other kings. I'm paraphrasing, of course. And, he's like, look, you got to pay up, man, or, we're going to send all types of military down on you to bring you to your knees. So you will pay one way or another, blood or money. And so he basically tells him he's not going to pay him, and proceeds to kick him down a hole, exclaiming that, this is Sparta. And then it sets off the whole war. So
pause for the cause. I'm sorry. Let me make sure that is hammered in. So there was somebody that came to speak, right? To share what's going to happen to the Spartan nation, right? Leonidas is the king, of course, of Sparta, and he's, these are like trained warriors. They're built to fight. They're built for combat, and like you said, they have their own sovereignty. This particular person, part of the Persians, came to see him, and hey, like you said, blood or money, what is it going to be? So Leonidas, being the warrior that he is, said, hey, I'm not doing it. This is block politics. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you think. I'm willing to die for this. So just kind of like extrapolate on how things get set forth and how ideals get brought forth and how people start to fight for things, because later on, we know that these people became, what we now call the group that is white, which is still brought upon the idea. And if you watch 300, you can see it kind of being built upon people sharing a grievance and then deciding to fight the non-white people across the land. So
hi, this is Maury Moreland Morrison, here to tell you Geico has...
There are Persians that are white too.
And now, insurance-minded speeches from
I just wanted to
Geico.
kind of
It's a common expression.
Focus on that disagreement and then how things get violent from there.
Yeah, no, you flushed it out for me, and I don't want to take too much time because I know we want to get on to other things, but you flushed that out for me because that was basically the first time that the Spartans and probably a lot of other tribes, they weren't Europeans then or even considered white, but a lot of tribes in the Caucasus Mountains and the Germanic tribes, race, what have you, the Spartans were actually paying tribute prior to that. And so I guess they became fed up with it, and King Leonidas decided he wasn't going to pay anymore. Something that's even more, if you want to come a little more recent in the 19th century, 18th, 19th century, would be the Barbary Moors of North Africa and parts of Europe, Southern Europe, who ransomed American ships, 13 colonies, what have you. They ransomed those ships, they ransomed the crew, the captain, and made them pay tribute to them as well. I can't remember well, that's actually what led to the Navy, actually, what created the Navy. The Americans created their first Navy based on the fact that they were getting hit. I mean, they were getting hit left and right by these pirates as far as like commerce was concerned. And that's the money part, the commerce, getting goods back and forth from the colonies to England to Spain to France, these different areas. You're interrupting commerce. We got these slaves over here, we got these goods trying to transport and do business, and we have people breaking in on that business and taking our product and selling it, flipping it, and then also killing our people. So that actually led to the Navy, and eventually they ended up having a war in Tripoli, ironically, Tripoli, Libya. I believe that's where Gaddafi was captured and killed. I think that's the capital city. And that's why the Marines have that song. What is it from I can't remember the lyrics of the song, but I think it says from Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. So this was going on for a long time.
Yep, that's the song.
Yeah. But go ahead. I don't want to take too much time. You want to kind of give some points?
Nah, you good. Go. Nah. You in the right space. You're in the right space. This is really the focus because, like I said, historically, I don't know if it's a contrast between blood and money, or they're sharing the same space. I don't know. I feel like you can have all the finances possibly in the world, or you can have access, but if you're not willing to give blood, then I don't know what it truly means. Meaning that if you're not committed, committed beyond religious commitment. I know religion people, we use that term, I think, to based off what we've seen historically, to truly mean commitment to death. And that's what I think about when I think about religion, is to commit to death for an idea. And I think sometime that thinking about blackness, being black, being a descendant of slaves, I think that I'm not 100% sure, what can a small group or a large group of us coalesce around that would give you that same behavior? How can I produce a behavior?
I don't even have to
get
my
to a
keys out of my pocket to open the door.
Right. What do we have? Clearly we do. And this is my Subaru for one, just ideas that maybe just manifest, or thinking about things in general. Do we have those? Are we thinking in those terms? Are we thinking in a blood term? Does that make sense? I know that sounds a little out there.
You faded out a little bit, I think.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Now, I was just saying, just from a blood perspective, what does that mean? What are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to give to produce a particular outcome?
Okay, so here it is. See, there's things that have already been developed in groups that have already been solidified. So you have nation states that are already identified as actual bodies of people. So the groups that live in these particular land masses that have accumulated in nation states have already been basically solidified. So the thing that needs to be done is almost like to create something to build, I guess, a certain ideal to fight for has to be something that's identified by behavior. That's the only thing I could think of, because most of the people that's going to be able to think a certain way are going to be probably across different land masses, and they're not going to be a part of the same nation, same group. They have to be part of an actual ideology. But what does that look like, though? How is that actually something that can be done?
Well, I'll say this, and something I tell you and T often. I try to throw it at you guys to see what it sounds like when I say it to you, because one of the topics is levels within the system, right? And I guess you could say levels outside of the system, if that's even possible at this point. But the conversation that you're having at this point, right, is that, are we the language that we've been given, or I would say, forced to use in a sense. We know there's some limitation to the language, meaning that when I say certain things, I just say the general population is going to have their own thoughts, their own ideas of what I mean based off where their mindset is, or the mindset they just naturally have, right? Based off their studies, etc. So at the highest level, if we're speaking at the highest level, we're speaking at a level that goes to a point where we're not concerned about, putting money in the bank account. We're not concerned about, followers, either real, either physical followers or even online followers. We're not focused, we're not concerned about reporting the news in a sense. We're not concerned about what's really, the day-to-day things that's going on, culturally speaking, sports, whatever, even just regular news or even bombings in Syria, outside of it being a study, of course. That's something that you can actually study. That to me is more reality, even though there's a lot of nonsense with that too, of course. But at the highest levels, when we're speaking about these things, is that where you want to stay? This is for DC, obviously, or to either or, but that's where we're trying to live, in a sense, right? I'm not overly concerned about, if you want to start a business within the American capitalist system. I'm not worried about you setting up an economic framework under the European Western Empire. I'm not concerned about that because we know how fragile those events are. Historically, we have the proof. And even in the current state, when we break numbers down, we can start to see that even what's been given to us specifically, and we push the numbers out, we can tell that we haven't gotten as much as we've put in. Obviously, we was free labor for hundreds of years, but regardless of all that, not to sit on that, I'm not going to be play on that too long. But my point ultimately is that when you're pushing. And we've had people push historically, and you're going to get a response. We've seen responses from the Western society. If you decide to do something different, if you decide to try to carve out your own piece of the world, currently speaking, we're talking about post-colonialization. If you want to consider colonialization from a historical perspective coming to an end, which we obviously don't necessarily buy into that thought. But if we go with that, how do you have those conversations without people, confusing or conflating their living, their current stay within the environment? Because, we tend to have, from a code breaker's perspective, specifically from a paradox, from my perspective, the focus has to be, around putting something together, developing something, even if it's just ideas to put into the ether for someone in the future to even hear this information, to say, you know what, I'm going to take what you're saying, I'm going to take what other people are saying, and we're going to finally get to a point where X is going to take place. From a Syria perspective, just to use that as an example, do y'all have anything to say before I switch over to Syria real quick?
Yep, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So, like from a Syria perspective, trying to decipher what that mess is, and I'm not going to sit on that, but for a second, just that, we know that America or the West or whatever is always, dipping, dabbling, controlling, manipulating, whatever they need to do. Basically, war games, warfare between them and their relatives, Russia and their whoever, the Iran and China, all the other stuff that's going on with the so-called civil war and Al Qaeda and what's the other group? And I don't even want to name these joints actually when I'm thinking about it, but all of the groups that they've labeled as terror. I think there's maybe like 1,000 different fractions of people that are, they're all being financed and armed by the big powers that be, and it's not funny from a death perspective. It's fascinating that even that is like a cultural thing that they do. The biggest powers, they almost like they play Monopoly or something with the planet at this point. And the world, you have people who are trying to fight against it. I think it could be a farce, but I think that you have people in the world trying to fight against the Western empirical powers, and you hear that language, and books have been written about it, and people debate it all the time. And what's better for the world? Do we police? Do we decide what's best and let people do what they do in each individual so-called nation, or is there some sort of global doctrine that we all must follow, so you can do certain things, but you need to structure things this way and do deals this way, and this is the best way to do things? That's generally the Western philosophy. Now, they set up most of these countries, I think, right? Maybe 80%, 70% of the countries, I would argue, is mostly been set up by Western nations. I could be a little bit off on that, but understanding that, so understanding the behemoth, the amount, the challenge that this is, right? Does that even drop you back down into a cultural, I'm trying to do this, do my own thing, I'm trying to do what I can do? Does it kind of press you back into that thought pattern versus saying, you know what, we're breaking free, or we're going to set our mindset up is that I understand I got to do what I got to do to survive. I got to do what I got to do to put a little change in my pocket so I can eat and even maybe retire, whatever you want to do, right? But ultimately, we have to reject a lot of this stuff, if not all of it. What does that look like? But I'll stop right there.
Go ahead.
Well, I do want to say, because to me, blood and money are synonymous. The thing of it is that when you look at Syria, they don't have a centrally controlled bank, so it's controlled by Syria, the state government. So they can manipulate the currency, or remove currency out of circulation or add currency to circulation based on their GDP, based on they can float loans to businesses at no interest. Plus, I believe they run on the Sharia law, or let's just say they run by Islamic law, which doesn't actually doesn't allow for usury. So they don't allow usurious practices. So essentially, what their economic model, at least under the Islamic teachings, is to, I can't remember what they call it, but what they'll do is they'll float a loan to a business, say DC or Paradox, you want to start up a business and you need X amount of dollars. So they'll float you, or whatever the currency is there, they'll float you that money, the currency. You started the business, but they'll ask for a certain share of the profits, over the course of months, years, whatever the case may be, in order to pay that amount back. But they won't add on interest to it. So interest is one of the holiest things in banking, up there with the Trinity, as far as Christianity is concerned. Because interest is everything in banking. So at least in Western banking. So when you have societies and governments that don't follow that model, that becomes a problem, because they can essentially set their own nation on a certain path that you might not agree with. For instance, if they want to build roads or infrastructure, they don't need to go to the IMF or go to another centrally controlled bank, say in Paris or London, where a lot of the finance is, and ask for loans that they're going to charge interest on. They can just simply give them the currency, and they can go build infrastructure for their own nation. And not only that, but they can nationalize their reserves, say be it oil or something like that. They can nationalize their oil reserves, and they don't have to necessarily put it on a commodity exchange and price it according to whatever the oil market is, the futures market. Say, for instance, the futures market for oil is pricing at a certain amount. They don't have to be subject to speculation, people short selling or taking long positions and basically making the price movement fluctuate. So they can set their own price for oil, for instance. And that's kind of what happened to Gaddafi, in a sense, is by deciding he was going to create his own currency based on the gold dinar.
But look, just what the answer. You're good. No, don't stop going. I just want you to just to get in more into just the comparison of it, though, right? So, like what you're saying now, it's like I'm hearing like, well, these states who and I don't know if you agree or not agree, that is below the larger military-based nations who have more control and more influence over the planet, that it's almost like a lot of these nations, specifically Libya, for example, is almost like you as an individual in this nation. Is there any comparisons there? You can keep going. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, well, can you clarify that a little bit? I think I know what you're saying, but
it's just that we have like, you can explain to me how Syria operates, Libya operates, Sudan operates, etc. Right? You can explain to me how they operate. I can pretend that they not, this is not towards you, of course, that they are in a vacuum, right? Meaning that there's no such thing as invasions, there's no such thing as governments being toppled, there's no such, these are all fake things, right? There's no such thing as infiltration, poisoning, fractions within the group, and then the bigger powers outside the group that, even though in the textbook you can define Syria or Libya, you can define it for me, and you can tell me how they're structured, but then we have this other reality. Does that make sense? So as a black person, classified in this country, right? I tell myself, my parents tell me, and friends tell me that I'm this and I can do X, Y, and Z. But then there's something else going on. So that's all I meant.
No, that's perfect. I mean, if you comparing an individual, even most people, not even just talk, we can talk about just people classified as black, but most individuals think that they do operate within a vacuum in terms of finance. But if someone were to come in with true capital reserves, they could buy you out, they could price you out the market. DC gave a beautiful illustration a couple shows ago where he talked about, you go down to the mom and pop store, you're going to pay double, triple, quadruple sometimes what you would pay at Walmart. So you automatically have to raise your prices just to compensate for what the price you're paying to buy something and then resell it. So in that instance, looking at a country, a sovereign country, quote unquote, I'm not sure how sovereign you can be when someone can simply fire missiles into your territory and nothing happens.
Or even change how you in a different view, can even change how you practice economics and business, right? So you might be trying to say be more environmentally friendly, as they say, right? Trying to be but you may have certain resources that other groups want to have access to, and there's no protection potentially besides what you can and can do, what you can or cannot do, with your group, as far as how strong you are to fight against it.
Right, and I think that's kind of what the analogy as far as the individual is concerned. If, say, for instance, I was opening up let me say this. I know there's a spot in my area that it used to be a black-owned business, quote unquote. It was it was like a fish and chicken spot, right? Everything was fried. The food was pretty good. Within a year's time,
it sounds good too.
Yeah, put you to sleep. But within a year's time frame of finding that place, I hadn't gone in a while, and I came back, and literally because I think it was called, can't think of the lady's name, but Mrs. Something's Fish and Chicken. Anyway, I came back after going away for a while, and I went inside, and it was nothing but Asians in there, and they were looking at me like, "What are you doing in here?" And the signage was pretty much the same. They might have changed a couple of the neon lights or spruced it up a little bit, but I found out what happened is that the business was bought out by the Asians. They sold the black people. They sold them their entire menu. They sold them everything that had to do with the business. So I say that to say that someone with more capital can easily come in, and you thinking you have this little business, this sovereign little thing that you're working on, and someone can easily set up shop next door, or simply influence somebody in the government, the local government, and say, look, these people are violating the health code, or these people are not, I think the taxes should be higher here. Something as small as that, something that you would not even expect. And relating it to sovereign country, this would be more like a covert type thing, business, corporate espionage. And next thing you know, you got health inspectors coming in your restaurant on a daily basis, or every other day, and then nitpicking and finding things here or there. or they go up on the ad valorem tax rate. You know, your property tax goes up slightly, or your utility bills go up, and so slowly but surely, they call it methodical gradualism. They slowly creep, and next thing you know, you essentially are quote unquote out on the street. Same thing with countries.
You know what's crazy about what you just said? You had me thinking about how if anyone, I think if you Google like top most expensive cities and then you graph it out for the last 25 years, you'll notice that it's so sneaky that prices go up, up, and up. Then when you contrast cost of living with finances, you'll realize that obviously, you know, the number of whites and even a handful, literally, you know, like less than 1%, but like very few others can live in those cities. So it'll appear very natural. But when you look at who has wealth, and I mean actual wealth, not you know, working for a job, it takes care of itself in a sense, and it almost feels very natural because these folks have captured all of the wealth of this nation. But anyway, don't want to harp on that topic. But DC, did you have just any thoughts just around economics, blood, and Syria, and just looking at how?
Well, like I would like to say that you know, being that we are the group that's the most mistreated, and this is globally, have been designated as the one that's the most mistreated and the most fractured as far as ideology is concerned. And then what's so crucial about it is that we participate and fight for our own oppression. So that makes it very, very difficult.
You gonna have to make that. You got to make that make sense. I ain't fighting about. Well, we have. Oppression. I don't know what that means. Explain that.
Well, we have people. Now they may not agree, but we have a lot of people that fight in the U.S. military, and they fight and or participate and give their allegiance to groups that fight other people that are not classified as white.
How many blacks do you think fight in like in the Western European nations? France, Spain,
here's
England.
The thing. Don't think about the number. Just think about the fact that there is a significant number, because I don't know what the true number is. Like I said, a lot of the stuff that we get is just.
I call it fifth hand information.
It's beyond fifth hand. So
Right.
So we don't know who we're talking to. We stay in an area where there are always so-called
oh my goodness,
Mr. Smiths walking around. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast.
We're around how many military bases? 7? 6? I mean, that's the one
Too
you know
many,
about.
man. You know, like people that drive around the DMV area, your
NSA,
phone could drop.
FBI,
Your phone
CIA.
drops at all times. You already know what it is.
People don't
you could be
understand
on the phone and your phone would drop, and you'd be like, "Why my phone always drop in this particular area?"
If you're in this area, I swear people do not understand on the plane. I'm talking about the whole plane. Like they do not get, because of how involved this nation is in everything all over the world, that we live next to the CIA, FBI, NSA, all the other letters of the suit, and Pentagon. What is it? Fort Detrick with all the diseases, Gaithersburg with all the biochemical weapons. They don't call them weapons, obviously, but I mean it's insanity. With Fort Meade and Andrews and Bowen and what is it? The Proving Ground where they testing weapons out in Aberdeen and on and on and on. Yeah, Fort what is it? Norfolk with the Navy base, Annapolis, the Navy base,
the shipping yards. Yeah.
Shipping yards, the naval shipping yards.
Yeah.
And people don't know that, like when we're driving around, it's so many undercover everythings. It ain't like it's undercover, like, you know.
You don't see names of buildings. You be like, man, where are the? Well, you know, you're driving around. Every building you see is a government building. Every building you see down here is a government building. But you're thinking that you're gonna see something that's gonna say, oh, well, oh, that building here is so-called the big bright colors that's going to say, oh, this is the so-and-so building. Oh, this is the other kind of building. No, that doesn't work that way.
The reason why I'm mentioning that is what you said about blacks in the military. It's not just blacks in the military. It's blacks supporting the entire apparatus for not only the military but also for security. So if people come to this area, if black people come to this area, what you're going to notice is that the large majority of blacks, at least 50%, if not higher, is somehow connected, either subcontractor, contract, or corporation, with some form or fashion of not only the military but of all the security accounts. And that's if you're working for Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, et cetera. It's a long list.
You support the government in a direct or indirect way.
You're supporting the government. You're right. So now we're talking about millions of people. Matter of fact, the most wealth in this area
absolutely
that black people have is coming right from the federal government. So
independent contractors.
The reason why I mentioned that, the reason why I mentioned it, right, state government too. The reason why I mentioned it is just because we're in it. Is my whole point. We are compromised. So I don't want to necessarily, but you got to connect.
That was the word. I think that was the word I was looking for earlier. And I think that what people need to understand is, and I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just want to make sure we get this out because this can be misunderstood as some kind of white flag. No. That's not. I sound like the woman in Get Out, but that is not what's going on. The gravity of the situation, the scope, the mass level of this is what we want to kind of give you an idea of, and how it's connected to you as a person that is classified as black / non-white / helping another group that is already constantly dominating you to oppress others, paying you well, but you basically are supporting your own oppression. How can you free yourself?
That's what you meant.
That is what I mean. How can you free yourself when everything you do for subsistence? And I have met, a lot of radical people that work for the government. You'll see him at AFRAM, you'll see him at, Sankofa, you'll see him at Dr. Well. They're around, military, police officers, everything, but at the end of the day, you strap up, you put on that gun, you got a badge, you got a uniform. Same thing with all of us. It's no different whether we're working in contracts or what. So that's how deep it goes.
So is it money or is it blood?
Well, that's the point. It's connected. It's both, but we're compromised. That's the point. Now this is nationwide. Nationwide. We are compromised people.
So let's transition just slightly to. I want to connect that to and focus on black people for a second, but from a white perspective, what's interesting is that based on what I just said, like you said, we go to each state, you see a similar. Even though this is HQ,
It's more concentrated here. It's a concentrated.
Well, you think about it. When George Bush set up Homeland Security, it increased the population. Was it 1.6 million that they brought in to do Homeland?
Absolutely.
Into this entire area, which brought in billions of dollars.
That's jobs too, and that's jobs. That's working.
Hey, look! Every time I go to the airport, who wanted you down at the airport for TSA?
Oh, you already know.
All black people.
Shaniqua. With
them good government jobs.
Daquan.
But
from
anyway,
up the block. Got him a good job at the airport.
Hey, that's a real good job. You in Memphis?
You already know. I gotta do this, bro. Hold on, I gotta do this, bro.
Good job.
You already know, bro. I gotta do this, man. But it ain't just here, though.
Look how proud
every airport you go to.
In the movie Get Out.
Exactly.
He was proud to be TSA.
I forgot about that.
It's gonna be. Hold up.
His whole identity was wrapped up in that.
It's gonna be all kinds of black. Anybody that's listening to this program, I don't care if you're in a major city. I don't care where you at, where there's even like a 10% population in your city or whatever. You're gonna have black people at the airports. flagging airlines. I mean, I done flew a
I
lot of
didn't-
places
I didn't-
around the nation.
Southwest.
We all over the place.
I didn't expect that.
And this
Southwest
is
should be
did you expect
fly free, man. Some of these, when I go to the Southwest line, I see mostly black
man.
people.
My sister worked for the airlines. That's how close that joint is to me. And I love her. You know what I mean? But it ain't like she's just the most kind of like, well, that's family business. But you get my drift. It's not like you're dealing with a sophisticated type of these are people that's like not really that connected to what we would call the neighborhood, so to speak.
And look, and when you add in, go ahead.
No, so speaking of airlines, do you think they would, the way they drugged that Asian man off United Airlines flight like a side of beef?
No.
Do you think they would do that to a white person?
Nope. Nah,
You know what I was going with.
nah.
Absolutely not.
Not no white female anyway.
Nah,
But anyway,
wasn't it two black males that did that though?
Yeah.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, it was two of them.
There was a
I
brother,
was
black man
just,
sitting next to
and
him.
I was kind of wondering. I was like, "What is this? Is this person white?" Anyway, it just still doesn't. Yeah, go ahead.
What I was gonna say about the economic piece is that when you have black people specifically in these areas with these relatively decent jobs, and then some of them are GS-15s and executives, et cetera, so they're making a ton of money. We're talking about tens of thousands
Good
of
money.
people.
Yes.
But you'll kind of forget about that part because remember, because of that, you have black businesses in this area specifically. We're really, everywhere, obviously everywhere, but
Yeah.
you have some black businesses as well. Now you find that, well, who are your patrons?
Absolutely. Who do they
And
work for?
You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So,
It's all connected.
It's all connected. It's just interesting. That's just how it works, obviously. Anyway, everyone got to get money from somewhere. Of course, I'm not trying to make us unique, but it's fascinating that you look who you work for, you look who's feeding the labor, and then specifically us, right? We're really getting a lot of our finances from. It's just an interesting.
I'm not very
to think
good with
about.
analogies. I'm not very good with analogies, but people that listen to this program, I'm the one that you don't like because I don't like money. I don't think money is anything that's going
Love
to
money.
benefit the system of
Love
justice.
Pay your
needs
taxes.
to
You got a
go.
car note.
How is that? You
I
gotta
You
think-
got fresh clothes. You
gotta
got
pay
fresh
lawyers.
clothes on.
Can I flush it out real
You got
quick?
that hair. You got that fresh haircut.
Can I
Got
proceed?
the fresh clothes.
Yeah, man.
Can
Paying
I
that rent.
proceed with my internet service? Hold on, let me proceed. Capitalism
good
is
stuff, too.
capitalism is
Good internet.
vampirism to me. And with all vampires, once you get turned, what you got to do? When you turn, what you got to do? You got to feed.
You got to feed.
It don't matter who. That's it. Ain't no friends, ain't no allies, and especially if you belong to the group that's the most susceptible. So who you going to be feeding on the most when you can't feed on the hierarchy? Because if white people are not going to go patronize you, then who's going to patronize you?
Well, that's who you need to be feeding on. If you're going to feed on somebody.
Well, I'm just saying.
No. What I'm saying is, you don't need to be
earlier.
feeding. You don't need to be feeding on poor black people. You need to leave them alone. Let them keep their few coins they got.
See, that's where we
go
wrong.
Hey, that's one of my 10 stops.
That's where we go wrong because
One of my 10 stops is stop asking poor black people for money.
Well,
All institutions.
What I've been told.
Economic base.
When I've been told about black people supporting other black people, you got to make that dollar bounce about that dollar, then the dollar bounce about. I mean, it sound like you at an auction or something. You got to bounce that dollar like the Jewish people bounce that dollar back and forth and back and bouncing off like everybody off like a belly button.
But this is the thing. But it's the thing, though. The general population obviously have limited choices or don't have a choice and got to do what they got to do. The small fraction of people who are willing to say, you know what, I'm willing to give blood to put something, to end something. I'm willing to give blood to sacrifice, and the common man will be fodder. And to go back to the Syria thing is that I'm not going to mess with that too much. I'm just making a point that if anyone looks at that, pick a group that's there, and they're giving their lives for whatever it is, for whatever reason. And it's a great example, because if you have 20 or 40 million people in a nation that they have their own fractions, but from a race perspective, we'll say that they're very similar. But these are, they have their own groups. But the thing is that a small group, very, very small group, based off what the European says, they're the ones that are actually at battle for whatever it is, but they're fighting for it. And you know what they're doing? Nothing is going to happen until we finish our fight. We're not letting nothing happen. We're not letting no events take place. Now, again, they could be considered a bit naive, because there's bigger things going on above them, and they're being fed with food, resources, and weaponry from outside sources, clearly, and there's no confusion there. But the mindset is what's interesting about it. Collaboration, who they're connecting with, it's interesting. And the thing is, one thing we know about the West, when a black person in this country, for example, was it Ice-T who was being investigated when he was talking about the police stuff?
Oh yeah.
So my point in saying is that we know it's real.
And the Ghetto Boys back in the time.
The Ghetto Boys, even on small comments, the fear, I hate to use the word fear, but the concern that any ideas, any mindsets,
fear is accurate.
Exactly.
You don't call it fear, but fear is accurate.
Right. Fear is, from Dr. Wells' perspective, definitely fear. But
true.
My point in saying all is that so when you make hard decisions, when you're willing to give some things up, and this is what I mean, for certain ideas that may advance a group of you that's made a decision. So there's not a collective sense of all so-called blacks, because black is a concept, in my position, developed by Europeans, and you're forced into that. So we can debate that if anybody wants to debate that, but you're forced into that. So I don't know how much of a real construct that truly is outside of the system at the highest level.
Well, I never knew of a meeting where all the people that was classified as descendants of slaves got together and said, we're going to all join together and we're going to call ourselves this.
So this is my point, because that's one, that's not reality. Mm-hmm. Two, when we study any fight around in any warfare, any fighting of any groups, or being any fractions, it's never going to be the general population, right? Unless they've been forced to do it. Right, but from a organic position or from a sales position, you're going to get a certain percentage, right? And then that group has to make a decision either for itself, and we're going to do what we're going to do. And if you decide to come with us, you do. If you decide to come with us after, so be it as well. I think that's the crux of it. If we're, like I said, if we're not living in that space, everything below that to me doesn't even mean anything. And I use Syria as an example. They're not. I'm not saying it's true or not. I'm just purely speculation. But if you're over there fighting, right? Not the fighters themselves, but the people who are in charge of them. The last thing at this point that they're concerned about is doing what? What are the five things they call it? What are the five? What is our boy? What's our guy name? Powernomics. What's his 5 layers?
Dr. Claude Anderson.
What's his 5 layers?
You got five levels of
right of building a economic system, right. A political system, a police system, a transportation system, etc. Right?
You go on one floor, you pay for what is basically the philosophy, and I don't want to misspeak, but go ahead. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
But he's taking a European.
You buy people basically.
But at the end of the day, the concept itself is built around the dominant society and them doing what they do. But for a group to break from the dominant society, meaning that we've made a particular decision, I think what gets confusing is that when I say black people, I think the issue I think people maybe have in general is that I'm talking about everybody, and I'm talking about within the American system, the current capitalist, imperialist system that is designed to build and then recycle and do what they do and do what we all do actually. So that's what that is. My position is, and I'm always speaking from this position, is that when I say it has to go, it needs to go, it needs to end. I'm talking about Paradox, not the code breakers, is bringing down the entire empire, whatever that needs to look like. Financially, however it needs to look. My point in saying is that when I talk about levels within the system, I'm only talking about that level. I give two blanks about having a company, investing in and I mean this from an ideological perspective, obviously. Stock investment. I want to one day win the lottery. I want to one day own a hotel, or I can't wait to get my retirement. I'm going to move to the islands when I turn 60, or I want to take a cruise. I'm not talking about none of that stuff. I'm not talking about collaborating with other black people around the country and coming up with a black politics or economic plan to take to the government, or do my own thing, or start some small thing, and then we're going to try to grow it and connect and use the internet to connect with other black folks around the world, and we're going to do trade. I'm not talking. I need to be extremely clear. I do not care, and I'm not talking about any of that stuff. In my personal world, me trying to feed and eat myself, I can play that game. We can talk that all day. But from a code breaker paradox where we're talking about dealing with the Western Empire, I'm only speaking again of the highest level, meaning that what has to happen for all of this to go. So what that means is that any plan, and anyone listening to this program, any plans that you're talking about, I'm talking about destroying all of it. So it doesn't really matter what you're trying to do today, or for your life, for your retirement, or even for your family, in a sense that what I'm talking about is something that's it's not even extreme, obviously, but it's just anti.
Oh no, it's extreme.
To keep it very simple, it's that I'm not talking about I want to move to Liberia and then try to do a deal with that government. I'm not talking about that, because until someone has made a decision, and I'm gonna tell people why I'm saying this. The reason why I'm making a point about this is that the Western Empire is going to fall. It's going to be invaded. It's going to be attacked. It's going to fracture. That's just a natural.
It's a natural course of things.
Life, birth, and death of systems, be it the planet, the solar system, etc. So I'm not saying nothing radical or crazy from that perspective. That's the facts. The question for some blacks are going to make decisions to be with the empire. When it falls, they will die with it. They will pick the gun up and fight to keep it exactly the way it is.
Going down with the ship.
And then you're going to have other blacks who aren't going to do that. I'm only speaking to those. I'm only speaking to the ones that say, you know what? We need to be prepared. We need to get my kids prepared, because events are going to take place. They're going to live their lives. They're going to go to college. They're going to play the game, of course. Clearly, they're going to do all the internal things that they need to do, be it start a business or whatever. But at the same time, which is that duality part from this position, is that I need them to be prepared. I need them to be thinking, you know what? If something does happen, whose side am I on? Right? Because at the end of the day, when you make that decision, the feds are going to make a decision on your life. So it's a real serious thing. And once you move into that space, this is my whole point. When you move into that space, that's when you know that talking to someone about economics, starting a business, that's when you know it's nonsense, because it won't matter at that point, because they're gonna strip you from everything, put you in Guantanamo Bay, take you to wherever they're gonna take you, poison, whatever they're gonna do to you to try to get rid of you if you make a move. We've seen it at the individual level, we've seen it at the national level, we've seen it at the international level. That's the facts. So it's not a game. It's a very, very, very serious thing. And I think that people get confused. From my perspective, they definitely got to be getting confused, because I literally do not care when it comes to you trying to do whatever you're trying to do to survive. But my point is that stop lying to black people. Stop trying to hustle black people. Stop trying to sell stuff to black people. Quit trying to take the little bit that they do have and try to get them prepared for the environment, one, that they're living in, and how to survive in it. not trying to build your wealth off of them. Are you kidding me right now? You on the internet, you at the churches, you all over the place talking about what we need to do for you and what you gonna do for me. You ain't in charge of nothing.
I will leave it.
Nothing.
We gotta go to.
You hustling
we gotta
the most
go to break. You on fire. You on fire. Go ahead.
Hustling the most vulnerable people. But anyway, we're gonna go to break. This is the Code Breakers on Black Talk Radio Network.
All right.
Okay.
Black Talk Radio since 2008, providing new black media for the masses.
All right, it's the Code Breakers. We are back, and we're gonna go and do a Mr. Fuller clip. I think he's gonna be discussing working in the warden office, DC.
Working in the warden's office. So just basically continuing on the same vein, but you know how Mr. Fuller tends to simplify the language and then kind of give us a little bit more of a platform from there. So please, Mr. Reed, take it away as we listen to Mr. Fuller break it down.
President Barack Obama is classified as non-white. He can't be blamed for anything. He's a fellow prisoner. That's what I mean by understanding white supremacy. He's just a person that, you might say works in the warden's office, like Andy Dufresne in the movie Shawshank Redemption. If he uses the word obtuse, he might be in solitary confinement. So if anybody's familiar with the picture, that scene in the picture, where a prisoner that worked in the warden's office made the mistake of telling the warden or implying that the warden, he did it in the form of a question, how can you be so obtuse? And the warden said, what did you say to me? I'll show you obtuse. A month in the hole. How's that for obtuse? See what I mean? If we understand white supremacy, we understand that Mr. President Barack Obama is a prisoner of war. But why? Because he's classified as non-white. There's not a non-white person on this planet who is not already a prisoner of the system of white supremacy, which is a criminal enterprise and a criminal prison system, and every white supremacist is guilty of war crimes, for which they should compensate at some point, starting with eliminating this prison and replacing it with a system of justice. No, President Obama is not to blame. Fellow prisoners, he's a prisoner just like I am, has no more power than me. Power as compared to whom? The white supremacists, at whom I get my orders from the white supremacists, and so does he.
Well, that was Mr. Fuller breaking it down, giving us a clip. Go ahead, Paradox. What were you gonna say?
Oh no, I was just saying I appreciate Mr. Fuller to keep me balanced. Keep me balanced. I need that. I need that. It's funny. It's rare.
That's red pill for real. It's difficult to listen to what Mr. Fuller says sometimes because
Well,
it's
it's not
so
fun.
much in contrast. Yeah, it's
It
not.
ain't.
It's
Well,
not
one,
fun.
it's not fun, and one, you're always contrasting survival with revolution, or liberation, or whatever pretty words you want to use. I mean, you're always fighting and contrasting the two. You get I get a little bit of knowledge, and now I want to in the world in a sense. You know what I mean? So like, you see the sheer level of mistreatment, the disgusting, insane arrogance of white people, the centuries of mistreatment, and how do you handle it? It makes sense why you don't want people to have information, because the pain is so strong that it forces you, it provokes you, it drives you to make moves. It puts you in a position to make a movement, and unfortunately, historically, we haven't been positioned. It's scary. I always tell you, I said the best time we may have had to do something was like 1807. You know what I'm saying? Because once mathematics clashed with invention and etc. I mean, I don't think people understand. We basically went from a farming type of situation to like a
mass production,
alien type situation.
Yeah.
If you think about 1805 in an operating room, even if we went back to Kemet, when you think about inventions in Asia, when you just think about the refinement process and then the leap between the turn of the century, the last turn of the century, I think it's hard for us to catch up with that. Just the process.
Well, what was needed to boom that, or to basically launch that kind of growth?
I say what solidified it was World War II. I would say it that way.
But even before World War II, what kind of solidified the group that is now basically the dominant group around the planet? What solidified them as far as being the most dominant group militarily?
I would say
like building weapons.
What was solidified it, what hardened it to me was African slaves.
Exactly.
That's
exactly what I was going with that.
The connective tissue, I think, is using the word white, and then as that
absolutely
grew, many groups of Europeans weren't even a part of that group, and then as they had to make hard decisions to include and set up different levels within their group for it all to function right. And it was a risk, and the risk apparently has worked for about 70, 80 years now. But that's a very, very, what people don't understand is that's a very, very short amount of time, right? We think about places like Kemet, you're talking about 5, 7, 8,000 years. We're talking about a very, very short amount of time. And in my perspective, as fast as it's grown, it might die just as fast. But those are just frivolous hopes that I have at this point. I think someone's going to have to kill it. But anyway.
T, you got anything?
I was letting Paradox do his thing as he came back from a sort of a sabbatical. I don't think it really was, though. I know you had things going on, but you came back very strong. I'm sure you had some revelations. You had your Paul on the road to Damascus moments.
I'm gonna tell you the biggest thing is that when you dig into this business talk, this economic talk, this finance talk, this organizing with the federal government, trying to figure out how you're gonna get some more from that titty.
Well, you talking crazy, man. You talking crazy. How you gonna be talking? How you gonna be talking about that, man? When we trying to build up the black nation, and you're talking about we can't do nothing, brother. What's wrong with you?
And I as I asked you before, and I hope that it exists. If I can find a nation within a nation that can set up its own everything, then I will concede. But just give me the evidence. The facts are the European has used African bodies, African energy to maintain and develop their system. If all African people, specifically on the continent, could somehow wherever it comes from, some spirit, anything, could tell them that we're going to do everything. We're going to sabotage. Forget whatever, right? We're going to sabotage everything. So there are no more resources. Europe will starve. Europe will starve. America would starve. Like I don't think, when you really think about we're feeding, I'm gonna tell you, man, that poverty stuff, man. Black people, I do not, I can't. It's hard for me to process because when I know what they're doing and how they're doing it, specifically from an economic position, us emulating that is insanity. Period. It's insanity. The response that we have to get to at some point, and I know we will naturally in the future, it just takes time. We will start to reject it. Many of us have, and many of us will continue to reject the whole thing. Because, if you look at what it takes for it to take place, you can't, I'll put it this way, and I keep going back to, do what you need to do to survive. But,
exactly. That's what I was about to say.
But if you have the mindset or the ability to really pull back and really try to see what's going on, I don't know if you can live with yourself. I don't know if you can live with yourself.
Some examples of nation states, let's say Lesotho and Swaziland in South Africa. What do those look like?
No, what's crucial? What does Haiti look like? What does Haiti look like? That is the question.
I just meant like within, you look at how wealthy parts of South Africa are just contrasting
resources. Right. Yeah. Right.
Well, the thing is that what's so scary? What's so scary is that we have very, very intelligent Black people who already talk about this, who already are aware, and they've made conscious decisions, fearful decisions, survival decisions. I'm not sure what it falls in, but they know what the deal is. They know how whites they're sitting near them, how they set things up. They create these appearances of how it appears that we're getting something, but when you dig into the numbers, we're not getting anything. You look at our poverty numbers and stuff, which are worse than the 29 crash. The way we're living, the majority of us are suffering. But they somehow, like I told you, every Black child should be pulled out of school immediately. Period. Like it's extreme stuff. Obviously, that's not clear. It's not going to happen. But my point in saying all this is that you are conditioning poor people to not only are continue to be poor people, but then you're indoctrinating them on top of it. So it's so foul.
Yeah,
because it's not like that. It's not like the African American didn't fight in the wars. Didn't say we agree with you. We don't have no issue with empires and conquering. We all in. Right? We all in from the Civil. We're all in. And even though we're all in, you still want to mistreat us. And then you got Black folks preaching to other Black people about what they should and shouldn't do. Are you kidding me? that you got the nerve. You ain't in charge of nothing. You don't print the money. Right? You don't even know how this operates. And you trying to tell another Black person how and what they should or should not do. Like Right?
It's vast. It's global. It is
they determine first what's crazy about it is they determine economics. They determine that. They set the trends.
And that's where the blood
they decide to prop you up or not prop you up. I mean, you gotta
just stay there. Just stay there for a minute. So that's just like what T was talking about at the very beginning. When they go to different groups, and they go to negotiate, whether it's the Dakota pipeline, and they start to talk, and they have conversations. We can give you jobs. You guys are not working. You need to take care of yourself. You need to do this. We're going to go to New Guinea. We're going to go to the Philippines. We're going to go to Vietnam. We're going to go to these whatever place that they're going to go to, and then industrialize, right? We use language like first world. Like, what in the world is that? What does that even mean? Yeah. Just think of in the concept of what racism, white supremacy has actually done to the psyche of human beings. And then you use a word like, well, no, we're all human. Because it's just a word of just coaxing what's happening to you.
You're trying everything you're doing. You're trying to exploit
You're
the black
coping.
people.
Yeah, and only that.
You're developed language. You develop language.
You're developing
Not
language.
only are we listening to weak people, right? So that's the first part. You know, the not necessarily even the leaders, but your everyday person, your parents. I don't care really who they are. You're listening to many weak-minded people who are telling you how to align yourself with white people. Now, let's not get anything confused on this call. Let's not get it confused on this call.
People go.
Say that again.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but where did the white people go? In the words of Nelly Fuller, that's what people are looking for. Mm-hmm. Which way did they go?
We're gonna follow. We're gonna follow.
I think all three of us either were near, lived, or was around Prince George's County, right?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
It's the so-called richest black county in the country.
I think that here in Baldwin Hills in LA, I think that's one too. But yeah.
My point is saying that is, and not only that, but then we also have access because we're the schools we went to, the connections that we have with some of these a lot of diplomats and stuff are here. A lot of diplomatic kids are here from Africa. Kings and princes. They're here.
Confusion.
Black folks from Africa. Okay. So,
Go ahead.
The reason why I'm making a point is that even though I've spent time in small towns and I've spent time in other places, I'm in an area. I'm near area. Matter of fact, I'm near the 5 richest counties in the country. Mm-hmm. So it's not like, even you're not just talking to people who don't have access.
Right.
Who don't know folks who is hanging out with some of these millionaires and billionaires.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it ain't like it ain't, we're not seeing it. Right? I think the county was the fastest growing black businesses in the country. Right?
Oh yeah.
So it's not like I'm not seeing black entrepreneurship. See, we can have this conversation. There's a lot of people who are listening who can't go down the street and there's 500 homes and the average income, and they're all black, and the average income is $120,000. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about a place that's not common, but it's fascinating to see that and have a certain mindset, and then have black folks from other places, even from that place, start telling you stuff about what you should and shouldn't do and how you should or shouldn't act in a system built off of mistreatment, in a system designed to dominate, a system that's controlled by the people that are classified as white, in a system that they have 98% of the land.
So shout out to
95% of the wealth.
Shout out to Yvette Carnell, Breaking Brown, Irony, and also Antonio Moore. They do a good job of breaking down the black wealth gap that is in this country, and pretty much it can be mirrored around the world. I know they focus on the group of people that are classified as black that are descendants of slaves here, and that's very, very important. But see, here's the thing, because at the end of the day, capitalism as a system still remains the same. You're trying to profit off somebody else's labor, cheap labor, by the way. If you're going to be good at anything, if you're going to be good at exploiting anything. Now, this goes for anybody, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, whatever they can do to cut costs. And we all know this, people that we know that have lost jobs because basically their company or whoever they worked for, the contract was up. The company that they worked for basically had to condense the workforce, make it more efficient. This is just the price of doing business. And what surprises me is that the people, and I'm talking about us, that is forced into the classification of black, I don't know if we think that there's some kind of Shangri-La and we get all of a sudden we get into this imaginary thought pattern thinking that we can practice business in a different way. Now, all I'm saying, and I'm just saying, like, if you want to have growth or build into a larger sect, there are things in place that white people do to you to change your outlook. So you'll get to a certain point, and then you'll be like, oh, I'm in fresh air now. I'm above the clouds, so to speak. So you get to survey the land, and then you start to look at the Negroes that you have left behind in a different light, and you would start to have contempt for the group of people, whether you basically from that community or if you always outside of that community. And then it will build an opportunity for you to exploit that group, because you're going to look at it as, well, if I don't do it, then, at least I'm going to be, a more sophisticated type of person that's going to, feed because capitalism is vampirism. You have to feed to survive. Period.
At the end of the day, though, we know that black people are trying, not all, but a percentage of us are trying to be like the dominant group, right? You want to say, I'm gonna give you an example, right? You want to say, well, if I'm selling crack, then why you let the white man get off, and why can I keep selling crack and get time? Like, that's the kind of conversation within the system we have every day, because we want to be treated equally. Well, who sets the equal? Well, they do, but that doesn't make them that they don't. In my perspective, they don't get to define. Number one, what's equal, and they do, obviously, but in my mind, I don't believe they should define. They should not be the standard. How what I find fascinating maybe even from a morality perspective, how does the empire, how do people who are not protected, in a sense, to some degree they are protected, but how do people that aren't really protected in the empire decide to say, you know what, they're the standard. I want that equality. You know what I'm saying? Even from generally in church, you're sort of taught to have a Jesus-based philosophy, which really is counter to capitalism. I still can't understand how that's taught every Sunday, and people can still, still can mentally and even physically still go to work, still participate. Many of them don't have the information, but many do. I just think that's a fascinating, situation, is that, you're being taught this very moral way of living your life. And at the same time, I got to do what I got to do. I got to eat. So, I'm going to go ahead and participate. And I just, ask God for forgiveness, in a sense. I just find that, I always find that fascinating as well. I tell people all the time, I can always use Jesus and his walk, real or not real, but philosophically speaking, to really bury this environment. I find it funny that people get on the internet, and people get, on television, and people get in these think tanks and these other groups, and they're speaking, and I'm thinking, where's the morality at? Like do you even, if you even get a small understanding of how this system works? They use capitalism, but they have a permanent underclass. It's called black people. Now you're bringing in other groups for labor, and we don't know what that's going to turn into even in the future. So there should be some real serious fears, and I feel like when I hear a lot of us speak, it seems strange to me, especially the educated class and the what do they call them? All the people that do the news and all that stuff. They almost speak like, do y'all not know what's going? Well, I don't want to use that language, but just the people that have been given a position, right? Go ahead. That has been given a position to be able to speak, and you sometimes, not sometimes, you always thinking to yourself, what are you guys what are y'all talking about? Who
is it going to benefit? Yeah, who is it going to benefit at the end of the day?
Well, clearly from a capitalist perspective, and especially an American capitalist perspective, small groups. So within the larger group, you're going to obviously have other groups within the larger group that a small group of them are going to benefit, and they're going to say whatever they need to say to maintain their status. Clearly, this is typical stuff. That's why I don't like spending a necessarily want to spend a lot of time on it, but you kind of get forced into doing it because it's kind of in the weeds. People are just doing what they're doing. They're mimicking, they're copying, they're just doing what they're doing. When we're starting talking about bringing something down or ending something, we're starting to talk about your whole way of life. See, I don't care about your way of life. I don't care about black music. I don't care about black swag. I don't care about black education. I don't care about those things in a sense that from a larger perspective, that's not going to be around. Is my whole point. When this empire starts to collapse, and matter of fact, even with this current dude that's in charge, he's pulling back all type of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Many of the things that black people have is because of the federal government. So if they just turn that off, we already in pain. We even be in more pain. And then of course you have somebody black come on and say, well, you shouldn't have been relying on the government. You should go and do this. What are you talking about, clown? What are you talking about? Like it's not all interconnected. Like it's not a web. Like it's not like they teach us in these school systems so fragmented that it allows you to come up with these nonsensical ideas, and then people will follow that. People will legitimize that. It's fascinating to say the least. It's fascinating. But anyway, I want to jump real quick. I know we don't have a ton of time. Did you want to play any other clips before I bring up refinement versus the unrefined?
I guess we can. T, do you have anything that you wanted to share, or
no? Go ahead, fellas.
One thing I want to do is, because a lot of what we're talking about is psychological, and I think that we probably should play the "Deception is Their Strength" clip by Mr. Fuller.
Well,
I think that would give
again,
a good context on it. Go ahead, Mr. Reed. You can go ahead and play it up, and then we can.
Well, here again, see, you're in a war, and when somebody does that in a war, that's supposed to be a serious offense, even though war itself is a serious offense, according to counter-racist logic. This thing about making fun, having war games, as they call it, and teaching people in video games and whatnot all about fighting and glorifying on television 24 hours a day how much fun there is in killing people. That's a part of the white supremacist philosophy, because it has to be. Because they have to back up their deception, which is what they use mostly, fooling people in economics, in education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Then they use violence. But usually on a day-to-day basis, the white supremacist strength is in fooling people, in using deception. What does deception do? When you deceive someone, you confuse the person. And as any boxer will tell you, any football player will tell you, any basketball player will tell you, any card player will tell you, confusion is the essence of the game. The roulette wheel is about confusion in a casino. You're confused about whether you're going to win or lose. But the house, as they call it, they know that they're going to win most of the time. They're not confused. Why? Because they're scientific. They've done the math. They've done the averages. A general does the same thing. A card shark does the same thing. A pool shark does the same thing. You deceive your opponent. So the white supremacists do this. Now, getting back to this lady, if she pretended to be non-white when she was white and functioning as white and acting as an imposter, if she deliberately did that, that is a major crime. Crime against whom? Crime against justice, for one thing, and definitely against the victims, people who are already victimized. Don't pretend that you're non-white and you're classified as white and functioning as white and been approved of as white. No, that's the incorrect thing to do if you believe in justice. Because the white supremacists do this type of thing. Deception. Always keep these non-white people deceived. Keep them confused. Sit down with the Indian chief and drink with the Indian chief. Give him fire water. Tell him that clear water out a bottle, and he says, take a drink here. We're going to have Thanksgiving here, Chief. So take a swig out of this bottle. So the chief, he takes a swig, and he says, oh, that tastes strange. Say, well, take another one. You'll learn to like it. And in the meantime, the chief is suspicious maybe, but here's this captain of of a ship that came from far away, and he has pale skin, what they call white, and so he takes a swig too, but he just takes a little swig. See, that's deception. Next thing you know, the chief is drunk, and the person who gave him that fire water is not drunk, even though he's drinking too. People who drink alcohol say it's knowing how to drink. So you drink your opponent under the table, you might say. You're not under the table, but your opponent is, because your opponent is drunk, because they didn't know how to drink that fire water. So when the chief wakes up from his slumber, drunken slumber, from drinking fire water, after having been deceived that this would be good for him, that he would imagine all sorts of things, imagine that he's stronger than he is, and he lost his land as a result of that, over and over again. And you have a lot of people who can bear witness, who are still breathing, who are on what they call reservations right now as a result of that original deception. And it ain't never stopped, because the chief weapon of a racist is deception. Getting back to that lady again. Stop doing that, ma'am. If you believe in justice, you don't have to do that. Tell people that you're white, have them suspect that you're a white supremacist, and then proceed, if you believe in justice, to prove that you are not. And you can only actually do that after white supremacy no longer exists, according to counter-racist science.
Man, I don't have much to say after that. I don't have anything to decipher, right? It's all crystal.
It's all laid out for you, right?
It's all crystal.
Speaking of economics, getting back, I guess, if I can get back into that for a moment, one of the biggest deceptions or cons out here is what they call a confidence game. So the fact that you have armored vehicles with security guards, armed security guards inside of these armored vehicles, transporting around ink and paper, which lends credence and lends people to believe that this ink and paper has value.
Mm-hmm.
It's a massive confidence game. You go into the bank, they leave the vault door open during the day, so you can see all the deposits, safety deposit boxes, and you have people behind bulletproof glass. And the banks almost look like temples. Marble on the floors. You have, chrome, all types of shiny.
Very pristine.
Surfaces, very pristine.
Yeah.
So all this lends to the psychology of making people believe that this ink and paper is worth giving your life for, giving your family members' life for, going to war for someone. Even something as simple as, which crossed my mind, is for those of us that, if we have a job or something, we'll be so-called invest in a 401k or some type of investment vehicle for retirement purposes. How many people do you, just say DC and Paradox, how many people do you know read the prospectus that the fund company sends out that tells you these are the companies that make up this particular fund that you are investing in? And then not only that, but when you get that and you read the companies, do some research on the company to see what type of business they're engaged in. Are they engaged in illegal activities? going out to news sources and seeing sanctions imposed on companies or certain I don't know what to call them, but injunctions imposed against them for violations of just simple safety hazards or environmental standards. These are things that just go over our head. So I say that to say that how you all always say, there's always a time, and there are different levels to this thing. I think we've covered a lot of that, going from like the highest level, from what Paradox is talking about, to ending this thing completely, to the lower levels where the religion thing to say stop, where the preacher's asking you to put money in the collection plate. And we know the church that had the monopoly on that with indulgences going back to, I don't know what century that was, but it was some indulgences that based upon you pay X amount of money, you can surpass purgatory and go straight into heaven. How many of us put money in the collection plate as children that our mother gave to us at church?
Yep.
So this thing is deep. It is built up from childhood.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's massive. It's a massive thing. The reach is very, very long. The reach is very long. I think that tends to be why people are gonna most likely shy from it and just try to develop their own little thing within the environment. And like I said, take advantage of Black people. That's my biggest issue.
I have a suggestion for people that want to do that, and it's very, very clear. If that's the case, then work independently. The Black solidarity game that is used a lot of times to forward people's ambitions when it comes to being more comfortable in the system is not a group phenomenon. It's always something that's solo. And I know that people don't want to admit that, but that's the truth of the whole deal. That most of the time, this is just to benefit you and your immediate family. This is not to just benefit the whole group, the community.
Hey,
that's not what we see.
Eat or be eaten.
That's not
right?
That's not what we see, though. So,
like I say, if you're gonna do it, you have many. This is a very, what do they call this country? Like a melting pot or something. You have many people you can go take advantage of. Stop messing with Black people. You can go talk to Arabs, Asians, and there's different groups in there. You can talk to Hispanics. It's like 40 or 50 countries and different types of Hispanics. You got Native Americans, whoever you need to go to try to get that. Do what you got to do. I mean, there's what is it? 330 million people in this country. What a few percentage of that. You need to leave us alone. You got plenty of folks that you can go and hustle, slang dope to, whatever you need to do, rob, whatever you think you need to do to function. I wouldn't recommend any of that, but if that's what you got to do to survive, then do what you got to do. But I mean, you're gonna start something, go take their stuff. That's all I'm saying. Because I think that it gets kind of twisted with the whole. I know we're going kind of far off topic, but it's kind of funny to me that, like, go try it with them and see what happens. But that's where you should put your energy into. I don't think you should be out here taking money from the little scrapes that we do have. I don't think you should be taking that from the poorest of Black people. We're already getting screwed. We're already getting exploited. We're already being underpaid. We're already being overworked. We already worked for free for 300 years. What gives you the right?
Right. And if you
and really to be honest with you, if I wasn't really feeling Mr. Fuller's some of that philosophy, I would be saying some other things on how to deal with that as well.
Oh, yeah.
Because the thing is that what we have to understand is that some of the things that we're doing really is detrimental, because we are buying into something that is detrimental. Well, matter of fact, we're buying into many things that many of the other nations around the world don't agree with. And like I said, there will be a time to pay. And that's just what it's going to be. But anyway. I did. If we had time, and I've only got maybe 20 minutes left, but I did want to mention. Refined versus the unrefined, and it's kind of wrapped a little bit around some of the political stuff that's going on, but it's more or less around comedy. And I was telling DC, I don't know if I had mentioned this to you, T, but I was noticing a pattern with Bill Maher, and even though he's considered a libertarian, I think, or liberal, whatever those definitions are for all those things, and he agreed, he has his own mindset about saving the planet and whatever else. But you like, this dude is it's like that stuff is just nonsense. He's a comedian. He's talking about it's weird. He's talking about like why can't I practice racism? I told you I don't really watch it, but somebody put me on to it and they showed me a bunch of recent clips, and I was like, this dude keeps talking about why he can't talk about black people.
Yeah,
why does he feel pressure that I can't say whatever I want to say? And I'm thinking to myself, the people who are suffering the most, why do you even care? Mm-hmm. All the things on the planet you can talk about, why are you looking for the most vulnerable people to want to do comedy on, to want to eat off of? Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like to get laughter. That's my biggest issue with black, so-called black Democrats, black liberals, all that nonsense that you thinking you are. And these white folks, I mean, look, man, I understand.
That's why he's needed,
got that slave DNA in us. I understand that. I know a lot of us got white parents and grandparents, and I know that we have this weird symbiotic connection. I totally understand it. And I understand that the whole white and black construct is something that's been developed and created and backed, and backed up with force, as Mr. Fuller would say, with action, as he would say. But anyway, go ahead, DC.
Yeah, but he's needed though. So when he goes into spewing his rhetoric, then he can always be used as an example. See, this is what it looks like when basically the tolerance has basically been alleviated. So he's useful in that way.
But what's funny is that this is what I mean about us. I don't know what we have to do and what we should do. I'm trying my best not to give too much advice here, obviously, because what do I know?
You gave some solutions earlier.
But my point is that it's only one solution. So that's the end of that conversation. If you want to call this program talk about solutions, you can get up out of here with that nonsense. And I'm trying not to cuss. You get out of here with that nonsense. There's only one solution. Period. Point blank. It's not confusing. It's only one solution. And if you're not talking about that one solution, you're talking about mistreating black people. You're talking about exploiting black people. You're talking about taking advantage of black. There's only one solution. Outside of that one solution, if you're doing anything else, in my perspective, especially if you're dealing with poor black people, you're in the wrong. You're in the wrong. Period. So whatever. But anyway, as far as him, what's funny about him is that he's like the president. Like he's like the same person. He's like telling them, like, "Hey, white liberals. Hey, white liberal, poor, middle class, rich, whatever. Hey, white, hey, fellas, females. We need to do what they do. We need to start getting back to." Being white. It's weird though, because that you have to remind yourself of those things.
Well, being white is a manifestation of practicing racism, white supremacy. So the fact that people practice and say that they're white, and that the confusion is with the people that are not white, but not with the white people. Because the system wouldn't exist. The system wouldn't exist if, white people didn't have a conscious ideology that was set in to practice and to protect what has been built for them. That's what this is about. That's what Bill Maher is talking about. So he negotiates on his show. I mean, when I watch him, reason why I stopped watching him, I just got tired of hearing victims basically praise this man when he basically always just. It's almost like, master let me read the other day, but you're still a slave. It's a bad analogy, but I just look at it akin to that. Like he shows grace compared to, a more blatant so-called racist.
That's the word, grace.
and
That's the
and
word right there.
you feel like he's good so-called white people, but that's the point, that he is denoting the difference between him basically granting you a pass. But when he wants to shut it down, he does. He don't care. He can talk freely. He doesn't. That's what I'm saying. That's why I like when he does that. I would tell him, the first thing I would tell him, I'll say, Bill, do not change any of your language, because what you're saying is too important. So you do way more good when you're honest, when you're not being politically incorrect. When you're not being politically correct, I'm sorry.
You remember we were talking about for years? Go ahead, T.
It sounds like the good, the bad, and the ugly when you're talking about refined versus unrefined.
Exactly.
You know, some people who are the good, some people who are the bad. You got a little bit uncodified, then you have just the straight up ugly, where they just completely going off script, completely uncodified, and people get upset over it, but they really should listen to that.
But it seems that it's
wrong. Mm-hmm.
After having 8 years of an image,
Coddling.
of a mindset, and a handful of black folks maybe felt or got access, this is their response in a lot of ways. It's strange that we haven't gotten anything, and they still feel like I don't feel white enough.
I don't feel white enough. It
really is strange to watch it play itself out, and almost jealous of the folks who won, and like, oh man, you know what I'm saying? Like, wow, they just get to do that. Like we got to get back to that, in their own codified, refined way. But we kind of lost that, and like some of our support was like, oh, y'all ain't being white enough. We got to go and do this over here. You know what I'm saying? And again, that's at a deeper level. Clearly, they're gonna, it's painted differently with the political stuff. But that's, to me, how it feels watching everything take place. And one reason why I think Dr. Welsing predicted what she predicted, to be totally honest, I think she really has that connection. She really understands how whites operate. And that's what we should be focusing on. Do what you got to do to eat. Hey, do what you got to do to eat.
Mr. Reed shared a message with us earlier, and, I want to kind of like reiterate the point that during Bacon's Rebellion, this is Nathaniel Bacon, when the white indentured servants had the same grievances as the black slaves, and these groups came together on common ground, that had to be eliminated. Race had to be developed. Now, this is the beginnings of it. Now, I know people can't think of it in this way because people thought pattern is thinking, well, there's always been white people and there's always been black people. That's not true. This is not true. That's not accurate. Race as that kind of concept is a very, very new thing. People were just from where they were from, and they shared whatever culture they came from, and that's what it was. And they basically developed their pattern of behavior based off what the hierarchy was wherever they was from, period. But when this was created, as far as the mistreatment model, that's the distance that we're talking about. See, that what you're talking about, just seeing a black person, even the people that voted for President Barack Obama felt a certain kind of way. He's not even descendants of slaves, but you still felt this kind of.
It felt good to me. It felt real.
Well, I'm saying, well, it felt a false good to us. But what ends up happening is, you see the word, you see the language, you see the blatant response, which is violence. The Dr. Welsing genius is digging into the psychology of why white people do what they do. See, because they never been studied on that level because they too busy studying everybody else. You understand what I'm saying? So that's the reason why what she did is so impacting, and it probably floored them. And anybody that want to look up Nathaniel, there's theories about what it did and what it didn't do, but you can read the story and read the historical facts for yourself and come to your own conclusion about what that means as far as the race and racism and the construct of what we're talking about now. Make your own decision. But the ability for Dr. Welsing to extrapolate the mind of the reason why people do to what they're doing, subconsciously, consciously, upholding the system, and she patterned it behind genetic annihilation. See, when you put fear behind this, it all covers everything. You know, people want to protect whiteness at the end of the day, and they're making people that are not white protected too, because you want these nice things, right? You want air conditioning, you want to use your computer, you want to do this, you want to do that, you want to take a trip somewhere, you want to have a passport. I mean, literally, we're giving you permission to travel freely. Negro, 50 years ago, you couldn't do this without violent interaction.
I would tell you this, the hardest thing I had to learn.
You should feel privileged that you are so-called an American, or you so-called somebody that is here now that's able to even walk freely around here. Like, look at the grace that we have appreciated to you. See, like, you can even see some white people, they want to hear you say thank you. Literally, like, you're ungrateful. Excuse me, sir? My ancestors and the people that came before me, and the reason why our communities look the way they do is a direct result of the mistreatment that we have received, and we have to sit up here and smile and thank you for it. That's white supremacy. That is how blatant this is. So you put on that uniform, you salute that flag, you say the Pledge of Allegiance, and you suck it down because you feel like you want to be a part of them. You want to be accepted as a so-called an American. So put your mindset in people that basically came out of slavery, that fought in the civil wars with the promise of so-called freedom, that fought in the Korean War, the World War I, World War II, in separate barracks, being mistreated by your own so-called countrymen. Think about that.
Right now.
No, I'm saying, but people
like today,
have to do
literally.
this. People have to do this to survive. So how can we reconcile that part? How can we talk to? How can us
and what can you
people
offer?
like us
But what
talk
can you
to
offer?
them about
offer?
racism, white supremacy?
Look.
Because they're gonna feel like, let me just get this out. They're gonna feel like we don't understand where they're coming from because of how they basically pattern and view the system. They may feel like what they're doing is way more constructive than what we're doing by being on this program talking about it. See, that's the divide that we're dealing with when we're dealing with victims of racism that have been devastated and dominated by this group. And you've been forced to feed. You're forced to feed. You're a vampire now. You get out on your own. You're throwing somebody out there in a problem of capitalism. That's why when you see people on the street, they're sitting up there begging for you, but it's like you feel like they done took something from you because you're giving them something, and you're like, you ain't even work for them, you ain't did nothing. You know what I'm saying? You're a little lazy, some, and it just basically this pattern of behavior it just basically completes itself. You know what we used to say back in the 90s or in the early 2000s when we saw D-boys on the corner, be like, you selling drugs to your own community. But then you think about it, the Iran Contra hearings, the pinpoint destination of basically the Ronald Reagan drug wars of sending crack cocaine to black communities. This is not even hidden. This is stuff that's been done on the government level, purposefully. But then you're mad at somebody that's practicing economics on the corner. To them, it's just like a job. What are they supposed to do? They're trying to feed themselves. They don't want to so-called work for white people. They still work for white people. They just don't know it. But to them, they think they're independent of that. So how can you reconcile that?
Can't judge a parasite.
And then that's what I'm saying.
Nobody got a suit on if they're on the corner. It don't matter.
Then you get locked up. Then now you're trapped in legal slavery. Now you're under bondage.
It teaches you to be more of a
it
parasite.
all repeats itself. So now you're going to get used for free labor to benefit so-called private industries, and now they're going to basically win off you. And then the cycle just repeats itself. It's almost like a battery that you see out in the field.
But haven't they turned most of a percentage of their people into dope heads? Like they don't care about their own. Like these people look. I mean, it's like it's parasitic in a sense. Like there's
not enough.
There's no. There almost
not enough. There's a fallout.
Since they have things in place, obviously to deal with. That's the whole point.
That's why whiteness. That's why whiteness is so important, because you do not demonize even that. So you'll say stuff like, well, there needs to be a different way of looking at this. This is a health issue. See, like when they criminalized it, when it was so-called people that fell out of the system that was classified as black, it was criminalized. Now it's basically they need treatment.
It's coming to us.
Yeah, they came out and said that they said they can't incarcerate their way to a solution.
Exactly. Which is true.
They're around 30 million, 20 or 30 million of them are on something. So it's a decent number. So they're dealing with it, but it's interesting.
You got anything before we get up out of here?
No, sir. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation.
You got any final thoughts?
Final thoughts. Many layers, and that we talked about this before, but we all are intrinsically tied into this thing one way or another. So, from the cat on the block selling drugs to the cat on the job punching the clock. I mean, it's all tied in. So, really can't cast aspersions on one another, but try to keep an eye on the ball, on the bigger picture. And I'm not even sure, this might even be for another show, but short of an act of God, so to speak, or nature, I'm not sure how this thing ends. But that's T.
Yeah.
Well,
I understand.
Yeah, I'll let you go last, Paradise, because you're on fire. But like we have said, we no victim that's locked up in the prison together that don't hold any power have the right to talk down on another victim for surviving in the jungle, and that's what this is. Racism, white supremacy has basically formatted a pattern of thought, form of behavior that has been gone around global. It's global. It's not just here. We are, us three, descendants of slaves, and we have a different experience from other people that's been forced into the classification of black, but we do share in the being dominated by the group or by the minority group that's been classified that classify themselves as white. So with that being said, try your best. This is suggestions, and try your best to minimize mistreating other people that share your classification. Be empathetic towards black people. Try to stop name calling at all costs. I know it's very, very difficult to do. I'm at the top of the list. I still do it. I'm trying to get better at it. So I was just basically saying this for myself also. And, be safe behind these enemy lines, like Mr. Reed say. Paradox?
Yeah, I'm here. Well, first of all, the black woman is God. I will say that I appreciate all the soldiers, all the fighters out there that are classified as black. We need your skill sets. We need you. We need training. We need to understand things. We definitely need to make connections around the world. We need to look for allies. We need to be looking into the future to figure out not how to. I would say, whatever we got to do. We got to definitely. I don't have any answers or solutions in a sense, but we do. We have to figure out how we can really deal with this environment. We know how to survive here. We was in bondage for 300 years, specifically us. And if you've been colonized around the world, you know how to survive. We are survivors. We know how to function. We know how to deal with this. It's been passed down generation to generation. So that's not hard. But what's going to be difficult, I think, is that us getting together, the few or the many, and trying to figure out a way to really put some blood in the game at the end of the day. I appreciate everybody who's out there fighting at all levels, been fighting, everyone who's crossed over, who's fought to try to improve our lives, to give us knowledge, to give us information worldwide. We definitely appreciate everybody in the diaspora, from the Caribbean, Brazil, Venezuela, definitely everybody from the continent, obviously. Appreciate you. We definitely got to connect. We definitely got to make sure that we're going to rise, we're going to push, and we're gonna bring this to an end and do something new, do something different, and hopefully it's justice. That's all I got. This is the Code Breakers. This is Paradox.
This is T.
This is DC, and until next time, peace.